Welcome to Mindfully Integrative Podcast with your host, Dr. Damaris G. Mindfully Integrative is a podcast discussing ways toward mindfully incorporating integrative health into our lives. This podcast will have informative resources, fun topics, interviews, and discussions relatable for today with a true mindful perspective in a mind-body, holistic life approach.
Hi, how are you? This is Dr. Damaris Maria Grossman, and this is the Mindfully Integrative Show. And I have to say, we have an amazing mindful chat with Dr. Michael Biamonte. He is a clinical nutritionist, but his bio and his history is so extensive, and I can't wait for you guys to learn more about him because I just want to read everything for you guys to know. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate your time and your wealth of knowledge that people need to know about. So, and then also your story. So, what got you into this, Dr. Biamonte?
I got interested in nutrition in the 70s. My father unfortunately contracted cancer, and I would ask the doctors, "What about vitamins? What about herbs? What about all these things?" And they just looked at me blankly. And they didn't know anything about it, so I became interested in it. And I started studying on my own about nutrition. And then eventually I went to school and became a clinical nutritionist and a naturopath. And then when I graduated from school, I had this idea that in order to interpret lab work the best, we can use a computer for the interpretation of the lab test. Because typically when you go and get a blood test, they have a medical reference range.
They do.
The medical reference range is based on the people who they look at who are like absent of any major disease, not necessarily who are really healthy. So I set out to redo the reference ranges based on athletes and people who had a higher level of health and see where their blood chemistries were. And in doing that, I came up with a blood chemistry range that was within the normal range. So if let's say as an example, if your normal range for cholesterol was supposed to be less than 200.
Yes.
I found the ideal range actually between 165 and 185.
Interesting. Okay.
And because if you go higher than that, your risk for heart attack increases, but when you go lower than that, your risk for a stroke increases
because you don't have the the viability in the cell,
yes. It's also because the cholesterol is building up in the Kupffer cells of the liver, and it's being crammed in there, and it's not being properly emulsified. So suddenly cholesterol breaks loose, and then you get a clot, and then you get a stroke. So this is the type of work I was doing, and I was really interested in finding a computer programmer to work with who could put all this data that I had, because I had many algorithms, and I wanted to get them in a computer where you could enter the person's blood test, and then the computer would give you a printout on everything that was happening. So what I eventually ran into someone in a health food store out in Massapequa, Long Island, who told me that I should speak to this Dr. Santoro, but Robert Santoro, because he was already doing this. He already had the computer. So I called him up, we chatted for quite some time, and then I met with him, and I found out that he was actually the fellow at AEROSPACE who built the life support systems on the lunar module.
Oh my goodness. Is this why I'm hearing in your bio you worked for NASA?
Yeah, that's how.
Oh my goodness.
So he invited me to come and take a look at everything they had, and what they were doing is they were putting together a computer model of the human body. So the model that they had was in Fortran computer language that's table driven. And would be the easiest way to do it, because when you have a table-driven program, you can just take tables out, which are actual functions, and move them if you need to move them somewhere else or rearrange them as you learn more. So I worked with him for many years. We worked for quite a few years developing this model of the human body. It was originally developed for the astronauts to use when they were in space station, and they were there for a long period of time in order to understand what the changes in their nutritional needs would be. Because we know that when you're in space for a long period of time, there are issues with muscle mass, there's issues with calcium metabolism and whatnot. So this would be the easiest way to do it, would be to have this computer that would just literally resimulate your body. And that's what the computer would do. You give it all the data from a blood test and other tests, and then the computer ran a simulation of your own body. and it looked at all the nutritional pathways, and it was able to determine imbalances and deficiencies. Well, as it turned out, the project was costing a fortune because we were getting a lot of experts from all over the world to contribute, and
Right.
eventually they dropped the project and they just told us we could keep the data. So
Wow.
that's what we did. We kept the model, and it's still in use to this day. And what we do is we run patients through it, and this story actually leads up into how I became an expert in candidiasis. We had a lot of patients coming to us and they were doing great. Like they would get on the programs, their arthritis would get better, their asthma would get better, all these different things would get better. But we had about 30% of the people who didn't get better. As a matter of fact, that 30% of the people had crazy reactions to the vitamins that the computer was telling us they needed. And it wasn't just I wouldn't even say it was just vitamins, the supplements, just in general, because the computer would give a very large spectrum of different supplements, from glandular supplements, amino acids, fish oils, everything you can imagine. It was programmed to be able to find when the person had a need for it and how much and whatnot. So I volunteered to find out what was wrong with these people who were having these reactions. The first thing I looked at was low stomach acid, because we know that if your stomach acid is low and you take a drug or a medicine or a vitamin, you're not going to utilize it well, and it could act as like an actual toxin to your system. So I looked at that, and I looked at all these different things, and I had a stack of folders on my desk higher than you could see. You couldn't see me anymore. The folders were so high, and I was looking for common denominators in the people.
Right.
And eventually I found out they had some kind of infection in their intestinal tract. And this bacteria or whatever it was, I didn't know at the time, was interreacting with these nutrients and causing a toxic effect.
In their small intestines or the big or the large intestines?
Both, actually, both.
Okay.
So eventually, to make a long story short, what I eventually found out was that these people had a combination of SIBO in the small intestine and Candida in their colon.
Really?
And why they were reacting so crazy is when they took the vitamins would interact with the bacteria or the Candida, and it would give them side effects. It would give them toxic effects.
Yeah.
So that was my first venture into understanding a little bit about Candida and what Candida could do. So that's 40 years later.
So bacterial overgrowth and a fungal overgrowth.
Yes, both these people had.
Wow. So you went into this. I mean, the bioengineering of this is phenomenal. I love that. I talked to my husband and I. He's a programmer, and we talk about like the body as a machine, and the fact that you actually like made this machine and it's available. It's like, Star Trek like.
The key thing is engineering. The people that I was working with there were all engineers. They were systems analysis engineers.
Yeah,
who all had backgrounds in aerospace physiology. So they were aerospace physiologists who were systems analysis engineers who on the side were all studying naturopathic things and clinical nutrition. And like in those days, you would be like Adele Davis and nutritionists like that, who we now know were the pioneers of the whole field. But yeah, they had those combined backgrounds. So it was fascinating to do this work. And then it became, for me, more fascinating to find out that the failed cases we had were all because of, you could call it dysbiosis. This would be the modern term.
Oh, this is what I learned in functional. So this would be the modern day dysbiosis.
Yes.
Gotcha.
The modern day dysbiosis is what was causing all the failed cases we had back in those days.
And can you explain to those listening, because I know dysbiosis is, but those listening, what dysbiosis is, or at least your version?
The best definition of dysbiosis is it's an imbalance between the sum aggregate of all your friendly bacteria and harmful microbes. So when you have dysbiosis, it covers having SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It covers Candida. It covers all different types of parasites. You're simply saying that the person has bad intestinal flora. They don't have healthy flora. Their flora is bad. And then what that eventually leads the person to ask me is, well, why can't you just take probiotics? Well, this is the thing I found out, learned the hard way, which put me on the hit list for most of the probiotic companies. They don't like me. And the reason they don't like me is because I tell it like it is, the truth. And the truth is probiotics don't work the way they advertise that they do. In order for a probiotic to work, you first have to remove the bad flora. So if you have Candida, taking probiotics isn't going to help.
Because you're
you
still
get rid of the
you still have
Candida.
the bad stuff in there.
And it repels. When you study microbiology, you start to see how different organisms physically repel each other in the intestinal tract, and Candida repels probiotics. So the probiotic can't stick to the lining of your gut until you get rid of the Candida. And this is what we back early we came up with this 4-stage approach where we wanted to first remove the bad organisms before we try to replace them with the friendly organisms.
So you guys are like the early stage of like the 4R, 5R, 6R.
We were before. I spoke to Jeff Bland.
I was going to be like, you guys are probably like the beginning pioneer of this before. Like, I guess now they're going 6Rs. So you're really getting it to even before. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
Jeff Bland was the one who coined the 4Rs.
The 4Rs, gotcha.
And I spoke to him before he coined it, and I was explaining to him this whole system and how this worked, and that's where he came up with his version of this, which was the 4Rs, which is still to this day valid.
Yeah, and would you go into further detail of that and then how exactly did what do you help in when it comes to the Candida imbalance for individuals? And or maybe first what is Candida? Because I think people may not know that.
Well, Candida is an organism that lives in your intestinal tract. It's normal to find it there, but it's only there in small amounts. The problem becomes when it starts to overgrow. And it usually overgrows when you take antibiotics or certain hormone medications like prednisone, cortisone. If you take too many antacid pills, eventually the Candida will overgrow. And Candida is a unique organism. It's a fungus and it's a yeast. It's the same yeast that causes vaginal yeast infections, but it lives in your intestinal tract. And when it overgrows in your intestinal tract, instead of it manifesting as a yeast infection, it causes a whole host of digestive symptoms. It causes bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, etc. But then as it advances more, it starts to cause brain fog. People start having cognitive problems. They don't remember things. They don't remember names. Then it can start causing allergies. It can start causing chemical sensitivities where you're chemically intolerant. Like you can't go into a bar and sit down where people are smoking and people are wearing perfume or things. It would just give you a headache and make you sick. Same thing with cleaning solutions. If you went down the aisle in the supermarket where the cleaning solutions were, you would be really offended by the chemicals.
So I actually just thought that just meant they were sensitive. So you're saying that having
you get physically sick. There are people who when the Candida gets bad enough, it causes leaky gut syndrome, and those people with leaky gut physically get sick when they're exposed to these things.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh no. We've talked about leaky gut on this podcast, and it's a very big conversation. So you're saying those that expose to Candida that also have the leaky gut, which is an intestinal permeability.
They'll become universal reactors, we used to call them. There are people who just react to everything, and very often it's hard for them to leave their house after a while. And this is also called mast cell activation. There's another word for it. Everyone with Candida and leaky gut has mast cell. People are going around now talking like mast cell is something new. It's not anything new.
It's become like this new kind of word lately. And I was like, isn't it in that same realm? But I can't say I just from my infancy of learning, I call it.
Well, no, that's what it is. So Candida can cause a host of symptoms and problems that a person is going to be unaware of because they're disrelated. Like a person's not going to consider the bloating and the gas that he has is anyhow related to the allergies that he has, or it's not related to the rheumatoid arthritic feelings that he has. And all of these symptoms are caused by Candida. Candida can cause 150 different symptoms that are so disrelated you would never think that they were connected.
That's very interesting because it's one of those things where is it a lot of people? You're saying around 30 to 40% of the population
at any given time will have it, and it's genetically determined how you're going to feel when you get Candida. There's
genetic markers for this.
There are a few, but what's most interesting is how it plays out symptomatically. If you have Candida, you can get arthritic symptoms, and you can actually get rheumatoid arthritis from having Candida, where somebody else is going to have bloating and gas and digestive problems.
Gotcha.
And then another person is going to start getting cognitive problems. He's going to complain about his memory, and he can't. And none of these three people would ever figure their problems were all being caused by the same thing, because whatever genetically is weakest in the individual is what Candida will affect. So if your digestive system's weak, Candida is going to affect your digestive. If your cognitive issues are there and genetically you're weak cognitively, then the Candida is going to affect that. And that's what makes the studying Candida so interesting, is there's so many different symptoms that are disrelated. A person would never put it together unless he really studied this, and then he said, wow, I wonder if this is my problem. Then he got adequately tested. That's the only way you would figure it out. This is why there's so many people going around with these chronic fatigue-like illnesses,
Right.
these unexplained illnesses that never really find out what's wrong with them. They habitually treat their symptoms rather than treating the real condition, because they never put it all together. They're not getting that their digestive problems are being caused by the same thing that's causing the rash they have, then the same thing that's causing their memory problems, and on and on and on, because the symptoms are disrelated.
What's your initial, like, all right, so you saw these 30 patients in your pile that you were like, they all have Candida, like, I'm saying it wrong. Candida. And I'm trying to think, obviously each of them have different symptoms.
Right.
What is your initial solution, or when you see one of them?
Well, when someone comes to me, we ask them they fill out a very long questionnaire, and we look to see if they have the key symptoms of Candida. Most of these people nowadays know more about Candida than the doctors they're seeing. So they come in there, they're pretty convinced they already have it. So nowadays it's kind of easy. Back 20 years ago, it was different. We'd have them fill out a questionnaire, and we'd look to see if they had the key symptoms. And then if they had the key symptoms, we would test them to see if they had it or not. It's the same format. The only thing I can tell you is now people are much more educated, and people are coming to me saying, I have Candida and I have these symptoms, and I read your book, and in your book it talks about if you have these symptoms you might have it, and then you talk about how you got it, and then this is what happened to me where I think I got it. So patients who come to me now are very highly educated and very astute.
So that's helpful. That's very helpful. Yeah. So you're feeling, well, first off, you've wrote a book on this.
Yeah, my book is called The Candida Chronicles. And why it's called The Chronicles is because literally it's laid out in that fashion as a chronicle. And it goes through how I discovered everything in the order that I discovered it in. And when you read my book and you understand my treatment is very different than the average person.
I haven't read it yet, so I apologize. I can't wait to read it.
Okay. The average person who's treating Candida, or the average doctor who's treating Candida, is literally throwing everything all together. They're giving the person the vitamins that are supposed to be good for Candida, the antifungals, the probiotics. I found that doesn't work. I tried that for years. It didn't work. Okay. So I had to develop my own system of systematically handling different aspects of Candida that would get a final correct result without having the person continually relapse. And I'll give you an example. When we give people antifungals, we have the person rotate the antifungals every 4 days or so. So rather than giving the person nystatin every day for several months, which is going to drive the Candida into drug resistance.
Okay.
That's a big thing. Candida very easily becomes drug resistant. So rather than doing that, we give the person natural herbal antifungals and have them switch them around every 4 days. So they may get 4 antifungals. Every 4 days they switch. That means 16 days through is one time through. And we will have them do that until those antifungals have gotten rid of all the Candida they can, and it doesn't drive the Candida into drug resistance.
That's fascinating.
We also know that you don't give probiotics until you've eliminated the intestinal Candida that blocks the probiotics from coming back. We also know we don't give them vitamins. There are certain vitamins that aggravate Candida or will make it spread. Vitamin D, coenzyme Q10 are amongst the top ones. Those two nutrients will spread Candida. Right.
But I'm saying, like, in general, I feel like, but because, well, the hard thing, as a part of it on my end, like, I feel like we're told, and I'm saying even on the functional side, we're told vitamin D is like absolute on the necessity staple.
Yes, and then when you read the pharmacology on ketoconazole, one of the major antifungal drugs, you're going to read that how ketoconazole actually works is by blocking the vitamin D uptake into the Candida cell. Ketoconazole kills Candida by blocking its ability to get vitamin D, which holds its structure together.
But isn't that why people are obsessed with but then it's increasing your can it's like,
Right. You got to
so
think about it. You got to think about it. Like
yeah.
Niastatin works to kill Candida by blocking its ability to absorb iron. So here I've already told you two
Yeah.
key nutrients, iron and
Iron and
vitamin
vitamin
D,
D, yeah.
that feed Candida and that the medical drugs block in order to kill the Candida. So where would you want to then take, if you had Candida, iron and vitamin D, if the medical drugs are blocking that in order to kill it?
So it's very interesting because those are like the top, I would say, I mean, because when you're talking micronutrient wise, I would say those would be in the top. Well, iron, yeah, those would be at least in the top 5.
Right. But they make Candida worse. A person with Candida, and this goes back to my original research, why are these people having strange reactions or adverse reactions to these vitamins? I looked at our heart patients who were on CoQ10. Why were they having adverse reactions to CoQ10? Well, they had Candida and it was feeding their Candida and making it worse.
How long is it on average for a patient to get rid of most of their Candida?
A year, I would say, to really do
takes
it
a
correctly.
year.
It'll take at least a year to get rid of the Candida and then get your probiotics back in good shape. Probably take about a year.
That's interesting. Okay. I've heard
Because now
different.
what? Yeah, but here's the difference. I can say it will take a year because I actually go through testing on the person individually, each part of the way to see where their Candida levels are. A lot of people will say, I can get rid of your Candida in 2 weeks or a few months or something like that. And you ask them, okay, what test are you using to validate this? Oh, we're not testing. We're just going by your symptoms.
Oh, we're just going by symptoms and kind of guessing in a way.
Right. We're not doing that. If I say the average is a year, that's based on testing the person and seeing that after that year is over, their Candida levels are now normal.
I would consider you more of a precision medicine. I mean, is that what, I mean, that's what you sound like more. Because I mean, one, you're a pioneer in this area. And then two, just the amount of work and knowledge that you have, it seems like it has to be available more. How come it isn't as available for the average person or the average, clients? Is it because it's so expensive?
I think it's because it's not really that known yet.
Oh, okay.
I think there's that, but then there's also, you have to understand, when you start talking to your average medical doctor about Candida, you're going to find two things. Either they're going to say, yeah, I know about that, and you got to really be careful with your diet because the diet's the most important thing, because if you eat sugar or eat things that are going to feed the Candida, it's going to flare up. You'll find that in a medical doctor. Or you're going to say the doctor's going to tell you it doesn't exist. All this stuff you're hearing is all baloney. It's not true. And I think part of what fuels that.
I know it's true. It's just a matter of why is it not being treated? That was my major.
It's the doctors don't know how to treat it, and then doctors refute it. And they're going to refute it because can you imagine the lawsuits that you would get? If doctors came out and said, well, we now admit that giving antibiotics can cause Candida. People who've had Candida for 20, 30 years where it's wrecked their life, you're going to have lawsuits going around like crazy. So there's a little denial there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm hoping. I'm not saying everyone. I'm saying more on the integrative side. Majority of providers that I know and that even my pediatrician integrate, they do not give antibiotics, but I'm saying unless absolutely necessary. But I'm saying I know that the conventional model will give it like candy. I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah.
And prednisone and
prednisone
and hormones like estrogen hormones will feed Candida, and antacids. How many?
Proton pump inhibitor. Yeah,
right.
So always antacids. Like everybody wants to take a Tums or a proton pump inhibitor.
And for years we've known about the apple cider vinegar test in functional medicine. If you have somebody who has GERD or appears to have excess acid, if you give them apple cider vinegar to take before they eat and their GERD goes away, it means their problem was not that they had too much acid, they didn't have enough, because the symptoms are the same. Achlorhydria and hyperchlorhydria, which is low stomach acid and high stomach acid, have the same exact symptoms. The only way you can differentiate it really is to see which they have. Is it really high acid or low acid? And the simplest way to do that is have the client take a few tablespoons of apple cider vinegar and water before they eat. And if all their burping and reflux goes away, their problem was a lack of acid and not too much.
Is it majority a lack of acid or a
majority? It's 50-50. It's actually about 50-50.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that. I actually, so through the research, I had thought it was low. And then it was like like the people thought that it was, oh, must have a lot of acid because that's why I have so much GERD. And
That you're correct. That's the shocking part,
mm,
but I think if you're actually going to look at it, you'll find that it's probably half and half.
very interesting. And then my next point in the GERD, and so what is there a correlation in the stressors in this, or no? Is the stress response not correlated, like an anxiety and depression, like the emotional immune part to this, or does
Yes,
it not have an effect?
no, it does, because
It
of
does.
how it affects your neurological
Okay.
part of the nervous system connection. Like just in
It
GERD,
does,
if you have a lot of stress, it stimulates your vagus nerve. Technically, what should happen is you should produce more stomach acid when that happens. But that's if your adrenal glands are okay. If your adrenal glands are exhausted, that you're not going to get that response from the vagus nerve stimulation, because it's the adrenals that are partially involved. So there's
Mhm.
that what we call a neuroendocrine immune function there, where it can go either way. You just have to know, you have to test the person and know what's going on. The moral of the story is, if you rely on symptoms, which so many people do who self-treat, you're never going to get anywhere, because you don't know whether or not you're treating the right thing. I constantly have people come to me and they'll say, I'm going to tell you something, doc. I've got the worst case of leaky gut you're ever going to see in your whole career. I've been treating this leaky gut for 10 years and it still hasn't been handled. And I'm taking this, this, and this, and I have a long list of everything they're taking. And my leaky gut's still there. And I don't know why, and blah, 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 blah. I'll ask them with this one question. I'll say, well, let me ask you something. This may sound stupid, but have you ever tested yourself for leaky gut? And they'll go on to explain to me how they don't need to be tested because they know they have it. They have all the symptoms. And then I say, okay, well, let's just humor me. I'm going to test you for leaky gut and let's see what it says. And lo and behold, it will say they don't have it. They have been treating themselves for something they don't have, which is why
Mm.
it's not getting better. That's the problem when people are self-treating.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also think that there's not enough correct. I mean, I guess maybe in the functional medicine community it's gotten better, but I think that still needs some educational change, or even just, and that's why I like having this podcast of talking about integrative health. I think it's so important to have individuals like yourself on, because I think the conversation needs to be discussed of what real, what is effective, and you're testing, you're not guessing,
Right.
and you're
And
testing real.
practitioners like we've been in the trenches, so to speak, for 30, 40. I've been practicing for over 40 years. So I've seen all these things come and go, all fads and whatnot. And we know by testing what's really accurate and what isn't.
And
And
how
that's
do
a
you
good message to put out for listeners, is getting tested is really when you start taking supplements, because supplements can have different reactions. I had a doctor when I was first practicing back in the early 80s who came to me because he had a prostate problem. And he was telling me that he read that zinc could help your prostate. So last year he started taking zinc and his prostate problem went away. And then suddenly in the last few weeks, the prostate problem came back. And he'd still been taking the zinc. So he didn't understand why. And then he said, then I doubled the zinc. Instead of taking 100 milligrams, I took 200, and it got even worse.
Oh no.
So I told him, immediately stop taking the zinc. We're going to do a hair mineral test on you to look at your mineral balance. But I said, on a hunch, I want you to stop the zinc and start taking copper. So he started taking the copper, and within a week, the infection was gone. Now, what happened here? This man, who's a medical doctor, oriented not in nutrition, not understanding the balance and interreactions between different nutrients, he only heard the zinc like it's this one drug helps prostate. So he started taking zinc by itself. He eventually caused a copper deficiency by taking that much zinc. The result of a copper deficiency is you're really susceptible to bacterial infections. So his prostate became infected. So when I had him stop taking the zinc and start taking copper, it all balanced out. And sure enough, when the hair analysis results came back, he was actually zinc toxic, and his copper had been driven down into a really deficient level.
So interesting, because I feel like there definitely needs that conversation of the, over supplementing is just as bad as over medicating.
This is very true.
Time. Yeah. So, but I really appreciate, you taking as much time with us and your wealth of knowledge. So I'd love to just quick of how can people reach you so that they can get tested and learn more about their health?
They can come to our website. It's www.health-truth.com. And we also have another website, the New York City Candida Doctor. They can go to the websites. They can also get my book on Amazon. The book is the Candida Chronicles.
Wonderful. Oh, I thank
And
you
we
so
do
much.
we specialize in long distance treatment. We see people really virtually. That's 95% of our practice is virtual, is over the internet or by phone.
That's great. So that means you can see people listening right now, wherever they are, because
That's
they
true.
probably, I know at least one or two need your
Mhm.
help. So, and not like you haven't seen many patients out, as it is. So
That's
I
true.
really appreciate your time and thank you again. And those listening, make sure you find a mindful way each and every day.
Thank you for listening to the Mindfully Integrative Show with Dr. Damaris Maria Grossman, family nurse practitioner. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not the substitute for professional medical advice, diagnose, or treat. Always consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your healthcare routine. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you enjoyed our show, please support us by leaving a mindful review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite streaming platform. Interested in being a guest or more information? Email us at info@mindfullyintegrative.com. For resources mentioned in the show, visit our website at www.mindfullyintegrative.com. You can also connect mindfully with Dr. Damaris on her social media links found on the site. May your strength and peace guide you to find a mindful way every day. Namaste.